All right, welcome to the SnydeReport. I am your host, Gary Snyder. Before we get to my guest, which you see maybe right next to me, sitting patiently, I need to remind everyone of our sponsors. First of all, Robin Winson does a great job of helping us with the newsletter, sending out over 100,000 subscribers every morning. And also, we can't forget, although I did, post about former Congresswoman Jill Long Thompson. Make sure you pick up her book, Across the Aisle, Why Bipartisanship, man, that is hard to say sometimes, works for America. My guest today, Tom LoBianco of 24 Site News, and Hamilton County Democrat Chair Josh Lowry. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Gary.
Now, Tom, did I get your name right? Because I am so bad at that. I mean, Josh's is pretty easy.
Not a lot of Italians out there in Indy. LoBianco, as long as you remember the I in there somewhere, good to go.
Well, the reason we brought you both on today, Josh and Tom, you know, our lieutenant governor in the news, along with our secretary of state, and I mean, we can go down the line, and our attorney general, and our U.S. senator, and the 5th district congresswoman, you know, all just embarrassing Hoosiers at the national level. But today we want to focus on our lieutenant governor. That's Micah BeQwith with a Q. I always put the Q in there. But for his QAnon, I guess. It started a while back, but
interesting.
We've just kept it in there. But, you know, when we look at the news today and we see that the General Assembly is looking at cutting Medicaid, it's saying we live beyond our means. And here we have the lieutenant governor going out and buying a $90,000 luxury SUV with taxpayer money, along with the Secretary of State, Diego. I just call him Diego. We're trying to make him a one-name celebrity here. But Tom, you read the news. You've written about Micah. Your thoughts?
Sure. Well, Gary, thanks for having me on, man. Appreciate it. It's been a little bit. Did your radio show a little while ago.
Yeah.
In the before times.
When we were just audio and we didn't get to see our pretty faces.
That's right. Congrats on having 100,000 subscribers in spite of all this.
Well, the newsletter has done quite well. You know, it's something that we started reluctantly. Robin kind of pushed me. And, you know, the first newsletter went out about 5 years ago with 147 subscribers. And now we're up over 100,000. So.
Wow, man. Doing incredible. Well, so, you know, for folks who don't know, you know, obviously I'm a former AP reporter, former AP State House reporter in Indy. Used to work at CNN, was, you know, mainstream, legacy, lamestream, you know, whatever tag you want to put on it. I worked in regular news. I call it regular news. It's professional news for 20 years and got laid off. The last newsroom to collapse I had decided I was going to work in, and I started my own thing, which is this 24 Site News. And I'm actually working again on some Indiana coverage. I realized it has been a decade since RFRA, and I was astonished by that because, to my mind, and actually I was rereading in my book, I've got an entire chapter called Now George. It's all about how Pence handled that, or mishandled it, as it were. So I'm working right now with the Indiana Citizen. You might know them. They do a lot of really good work. And we're working on a joint project that's focused on Micah BeQwith. So I'm working up a profile of Micah BeQwith right now. The title of the project is One Heartbeat Away. What is the Christian nationalist agenda for Indiana? And you know, I think your listeners and viewers probably are well aware of Micah BeQwith. I spent some time with him last week. So I was back in Indy, hanging out at the State House last week. And I rode in the car. I was in the luxury vehicle.
Did you sit in the front seat?
We fought for it. No, I'm just kidding. It's nice. I smell the leather. I've sat in that thing. It is a comfortable ride. It's got these big, gigantic, like almost like the entire ceiling in the car. It's the sunroof, whatever you call that. It's almost like there's no aluminum up there. Real nice display on the front, like this gigantic. It's like a 13-inch screen or something, or not 13-inch, whatever. Like it's a big screen. Okay. Um, you know, uh,
You don't know how jealous I am right now.
it was a comfortable ride, and it accelerates real nice if you got to pass people. We were driving between stops for a rotary up in Monticello, and what was the other one? It's Lincoln Day in Argos. It was Todd Rikita was up there too. I didn't get a chance to take a look at his car, but yeah, it's a real nice ride.
You know, I'm just going to stop you real quick, and I don't do this very often, but I am going to go and quote Wayne and Garth here and say, "We are not worthy. We are not worthy."
Well, I think you're worthy. You paid for it. I'm I'm living in Maryland again. You know, I'm from Baltimore, so I mean, I didn't pay for it. Maybe I'm not worthy. Okay, maybe I'll send a check in. You know, yeah, everybody should get a ride, right? It rides real smooth, man, and it's real nice. He's got the little kid seats in the back, in the trunk. You know, kind of hangs
Yeah.
up the coat. You know, we talked. I spent the whole day with him, learned a lot, or potentially learned a lot. I don't know. I haven't fact checked everything yet, but I think I learned a lot. And now that all of that will be in the profile when I do publish this with 24 Site News and the Indiana Citizen.
You know, maybe we can set something up. Maybe you can talk to him. He blocked me, but maybe you can talk to him. Maybe we can set something up where he can give free rides in that at the Indiana State Fair. Maybe set it up right next to the Himalaya.
Well, you know, I'll tell you, part of our conversation, you know, you say all these nasty things about people, Gary, and I'm shocked to find out that he blocked you. But one of the things he did tell me is that he actually enjoys talking and conversing with people he disagrees with. And I'll be pointing that out in the profile. So maybe he'll unblock you, you know,
Well,
despite,
that's odd because I've invited him on this show several times with.
okay.
Well, let me, Josh, your thoughts on apparently the luxury ride that Tom has been cruising around Indiana in.
Where to start? I find it interesting that Tom BeQwith told you that he likes to talk with people that disagree with him, because I heard him getting chastised by Tony Katz, the local conservative radio host, because I forget where it was. He wouldn't go to some Republican dinner because he's like, oh, the conservative establishment doesn't like me. And Tony Katz, who I would not exactly consider the voice of reason, was like, dude, you got to talk to people. But
Interesting.
that notwithstanding, I guess the first thing I think when I hear about this luxury ride is, I mean, with Trump's tariffs, $90,000 for a vehicle is not going to be that big of a deal here in a couple weeks. So really, this isn't going to look so bad in hindsight. But look, the thing with this is it's not even the hypocrisy. I think there's been so much hypocrisy from politicians for years that the public, whether rightly or wrongly, is just immune to it. What bothers me more is the lack of leadership, right? Like, you always want the idea of a leader that isn't going to ask of the people that he leads anything that he wouldn't do himself. And so then when you have BeQwith leading these rallies and saying, we've got to cut property taxes, local governments, you guys can find a way to tighten your belts. Police departments, schools, road construction, you guys find a way to save some money, but I'm not going to do that. That to me is just horrible leadership, because we all know he could have I thought my used Ford F-150 was expensive, but I would never pay $80,000 for a vehicle. So I don't even understand like how I felt like he had to try to spend that much on a vehicle, but maybe that's just where
I feel bad because I have a $30,000 Forester.
That's pretty good for a Subaru. I mean, those new Subarus run you up upward of 40, don't they?
Well, mine's a 2020, so
Okay.
we actually went and looked at some cars this weekend, And I totally forgot about Liberation Day yesterday, so I'm afraid to go back
Oh,
and actually
congrats.
price that out again.
Let's go.
Yeah. Hey, how did you guys celebrate?
I got liberated. I don't know, but I'm here still, I think. I feel liberated. Uh, slight, a little bit more levity than usual, perhaps.
We,
Feet don't
we
touch the ground as much, something like that.
we celebrated by talking with Dr. Michael Hicks from Ball State yesterday. So he's not feeling very, very liberated. And as one of Indiana's chief economists at Ball State, he's a little concerned about Hoosier families, Hoosier workers, Hoosier businesses, and more specifically farmers. So, feel liberated now because I'm pretty sure that's not the feeling you're going to have 3, 6, 9, 12 months from now.
While it's getting liberated. So,
Well, go ahead, Josh. You were saying.
Oh yeah, about BeQwith. Sorry, I got sidetracked on the tariffs.
I know it's easy.
Yeah. I think the other thing too that was crazy, and I don't know if Tom, did he talk to you about this? Was what I had read was the reasoning why you had to have that was basically that they're men, and it was like, well, there's 3 men,
yeah.
so you got to have. And I was like, I'm pretty sure you can fit 3 or 4 men in most vehicles. You don't have to get the luxury version to do so.
Yeah. Yeah, it was weird. Like he said something about a car crash, like they let Suzanne Crawford drive it and she got in or I'm sorry, not Crouch, I'm sorry, to drive it and she got in an accident and I have no idea if that's accurate or not. And like the old car was banged up, didn't work real well, and it was too small for them because it's only women driving around in there. Which I did think was a little bit weird because she's like a good
Jesus.
half-foot taller than him, isn't she?
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, I love Diego, man. I haven't seen him in forever, but he's kind of like a garden gnome. He's like, I mean, he's what, 5'2"? Dude, I'll tell you, man. You remember when Mitch used to wear the what was it? Didn't he have those lifts or whatever? He'd go
The
stand up on a
shoes.
box,
Yeah.
Or he said he was like 5'8". That was like the official thing. And first time I met him, I was like, dude, I'm 5'8". Like, no, not incorrect. I don't know why you got it. I don't know why that's the marketing. I don't know why that's the
Does it
rationale
have
behind it. That is the
the
rationale.
side rail that folds down, or does he have to get
Oh
a
yeah,
leg up?
it's definitely got that. It's got that little it's not a running board, but yeah, that like step when you get in there. I don't know if it folds down or folds up, but I definitely used it because, I'm not as tall as Suzanne Crouch. So,
I was talking to a friend of mine who worked for Governor O'Bannon.
mm,
And and this was way back in the day, and he said he used to drive Governor O'Bannon around in a Chevy Impala, I think is what he
wow,
said.
crazy.
And now we're up to $90,000 luxury vehicles for our elected officials.
The
One of the things about this, and so I worked at the Attorney General's office for years. That was my first job out of law school before I started under Zeller. He could not be any more different from Todd Rokita. I remember he said in my interview, I'm a Republican, you're nonpartisan.
mm,
And that's the way that he ran that office, and I enjoyed it. But one of the things I learned that working for the state was there were times where we got some of the crappier stuff. And you kind of just accepted that because no matter the rationale, it's never going to make sense to the average voter why you don't have the money for healthcare, or you don't have the money for the potholes, or you don't have the money for whatever, but then there's a luxury item. And even if that one luxury item is not enough to make the difference, it's just a general disrespect that you're showing your voters to say that I deserve the highest equality, but not you.
You
And
know,
I guess that just doesn't travel from Zeller's office to BeQwith.
especially when they're putting, autism kids on wait lists,
Yeah.
wait lists for nursing. I mean, you can go down the line
mm.
on, changes they are making because of the budget and the fact that Todd, or excuse me, that Micah with a Q, BeQwith is is, cruising around 65 and 69 and 31 and 70 and 74, in this big country SUV. And the fact that Tom got a ride in it, and I haven't even seen it up close.
You better be nicer. You better start kissing some butt.
Apparently I am, just the wrong ones.
I remember Rex Early used to say there's hypocrisy and then there's hypocrisy.
Hey, can I ask a question, Tom? Is this okay, Gary?
Yeah,
Go right ahead.
I've always wondered something about this. Over the last, 10 years, you have politicians that have made it their go-to that the media is evil. The media is against the enemy of the
They're real afraid of us. It's really crazy.
BeQwith has always been one of those guys.
Yeah.
Then, like, when he goes to interview with you,
yeah.
I mean, is he just candid and you're just friendly and that's all a show? Or is the entire time he just trashing you to your face?
He did ask if I'm going to do him dirty or something like that. And I was like, I don't know, man. Like, I mean, when you report something, the actions are the actions. I mean, I can't, if it happens, it happens. Or if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. It's kind of on him. I don't know. Look, I mean, I've been covering Trump for 10 years. When I left Indiana, I remember thinking to myself, it was right after RIFRA to go to CNN and cover the 2016 election. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, oh man, thank God I'm never going to have to cover Mike Pence again. That guy is so boring. Like, he's really just incredible. And get to
Thank
DC
God.
and Trump descends the escalator. And, I was actually on Sean Spicer's show earlier today. I think I don't know when they'll air that. It's always been there. I worked for the Washington Times years ago. When I was in undergrad at the University of Maryland, I covered the former Maryland governor, Bob Ehrlich, and I must have been like 20 years old. I was working for the Student Wire Service, the equivalent of the State House file for the University of Maryland.
Man.
And I was sitting in the back of a room, and Bob Ehrlich points me out, and he's like, look, there's that evil media that hates us so much. And everybody turns around, they're kind of laughing and whatnot. And as a 20-year-old kid, that's pretty intimidating, having the governor pick you out and be like, oh, these people are evil, terrible, just real bad people. And you're kind of trained for that too. You're kind of trained to expect that when you expose power, they're not going to like it. If you're doing, and so you kind of develop a thick skin. But with Trump, it became violent. And I remember him encouraging the violence from up there. And this is what you see in authoritarian countries.
Mm-hmm.
This is how Hungary is under Orban. I don't know enough about Turkey, but, it seems to have escalated significantly over there. And that certainly seems to be a part of the Orban playbook. And there's a weird little dance to a long way of getting to your question. There is a strange dance, when you're interviewing somebody who says that you suck. It's like, dude, you suck as a human. You just kind of, as a reporter, you just kind of get used to like suppressing that or, letting it wash over you. And I do think that he dislikes the media, but at the same time, there's a symbiotic relationship almost because he needs media. Yeah. He needs coverage. And then it really is incumbent on us in the press to decide how much we respect ourselves and how much we respect this industry. And this is the fourth estate. I mean, this is a fundamental pillar of democracy and, and how to handle it from there. I don't really care about crazy comments and whatnot because everything's a crazy comment these days. The White House advisor is a Nazi, or at least he cosplays a Nazi. All right. So I don't think it gets anything he's going to say is not crazy enough to top that. I mean, you're going to have to, you're going to have to start put, like one of these scenes from Inglourious Bastards, like, so I'm used to it at this point. It's not good. It's highly unhealthy. And for the life of me, I don't understand why they're afraid. I don't get that part. I've never figured that out, but that's their tactic. That's one of their political tactics.
I was watching MSNBC this morning, and this kind of plays into what you're writing about now. They were talking about, for one of the first times in I don't want to say recorded history because that's a long time, but in times that they've been covering, they did a story about how men now favor religion. More men favor religion over women, and women are leaving religion faster than men.
Interesting.
And they had Charlie Kirk's organization on there. They had the Faith Keepers, and the interviews with these men talked about getting back to the natural family. And it always seemed to come back to wanting to put women back in their place. And, you know, when you talk about Christian nationalism, which Micah BeQwith is not shy about, I mean, there's videos everywhere. You know, God told him that the J6 people told them to go and storm the Capitol, why you should be a Christian nationalist, blah, blah, blah. My guess is he's not talking about my Christian nationalism. You know, I'm a Catholic. I'm sure he's not talking about that. So, you know, when you're doing your story on him and Christian nationalism, is this something that you think he's a true believer in, or is it something that is a ladder to power?
I'm not going to answer that right now. That's going to be in the story. But I've seen that transformation on the Christian right, and really since the pandemic. And I think you did have that escalation after with the big lie, the modern big lie, not the big lie of Hitler, but the current big lie of 2020 that Trump pushed about the election. And, you know, there's a very good, he's a theology professor named Matthew Taylor, who does, he talks about the New Apostolic Reformation. And this is a style of they call it post-denominational Christianity. It's very charismatic. It's very Pentecostal. If if Gary probably remember, you know, I went into some of this stuff in my Pence book. You know, trying to delineate or to understand, to answer that question, right? Is it a true believer? Is it something more callous? You have to understand the faith. And, you know, you get into some end time stuff. You get into, you know, Jerry Falwell, Pat Robertson, you know, that style of, you know, Christianity, that style of practice. This new thing, this new apostolic reformation is really a blending of church and state. It's very, Matthew Taylor talks about this in one of his podcasts. I'm blanking on the name of it right now, but he talks about the major role that it's EVATs. I can't remember what the acronym stands for, but they played in the January 6th insurrection in organizing the insurrection. And a number of them went to jail for trespassing, assaulting police. I don't know if it's a crime to smear feces on the wall of a public building, but so maybe they didn't get charged for that. But they played a significant role in that. And, you know, the same thing with Charlie Kirk here, grabbing a hold of this and kind of corralling it with the Trump administration, the second Trump administration. There's a unifying of that style of practice with the state under Trump. And I don't know, I'm actually in the process right now of trying to research what would be some corollaries, historical corollaries for this. I don't know that. I haven't seen this in modern times. You know, even, you know, when Reagan was in office, even W himself was an evangelical, but it was never knit together quite like this. So I think I don't want to reveal too much because a lot of this will be answered in the profile.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, let me ask Josh. Josh, you are the Democrat chair of probably the second largest county in the state. You're in Micah BeQwith with accused. You know, you're in his home turf. How is this luxury vehicle purchase playing down there? And you know, tie that in with how the Christian nationalist theme is playing.
So first I'll say on the vehicle, I hate to say this, but I don't think it's going to matter. I think that the right wing has so trained their followers that everything negative is just liberal bias, right? I guarantee you Tom has had a time where somebody has accused him of liberal bias because he just reported something they said. Like, it's not Tom's fault if you're stupid. But like when you say something and it doesn't go well, like, I mean, how often has Trump got caught lying? He says, oh, that's media bias. You said it
every day.
every day. As far as the evangelical thing, I could tell you, I've thought a lot about this. I mean, I was born and raised in the church. My dad preached growing up.
Really?
I've gone, my wife is from, I guess, sort of this, I guess that the postmodern, or whatever Tom called it. You can tell how often I pay attention to this stuff now. But, and I think there's two parts to it in why that it's become so, such a stronghold in government. One is just the growth of it in general, right? And I think that's a combination of, you have people like Charlie Kirk at the top that I think are just pure grifters. And then below them, I think a lot of Christianity actually creates a frame that was perfect for Trump to walk into. And what I mean is, the entire New Testament is built around the idea that you will be persecuted for your beliefs and only one man can save you. And that is literally the entire Trump message. So when you take that and combine it with evangelical voters show up, that's why they have such a strong foothold. I don't know what the number is, but let's say they're 30% of the voters in America, but you can bet that 30% is going to show up at every election. They're the ones that decide the primary, and they give you a floor. So their political power, just because of their consistency, has given them more and more power within our government.
Wow, that's remarkable. Were you raised evangelical?
I don't know. I don't think so. I don't know. We did. Here's how naive I was of all of this stuff. I didn't know there were different denominations until I went to college. And people are like, "What denomination are you?" I was like, "I don't know what that means." So,
growing up
a
Catholic,
lot of the
you're
mega
either
churches
Catholic
are
or Protestant.
non-denominational.
It was, and you know, I know that Charlie Kirk or Micah BeQwith or whichever leader it is, they're not talking about Catholicism. They're talking about, you know, something that is very foreign to me, because I've never been to anything but a Catholic church.
I think you got to get out, right? My friend John Ward wrote a really good book called Testimony. And so we used to work together at the Washington Times. He used to work at Yahoo News for years. He was a national correspondent. When Pence's people, they decided they were done with me and they wanted to screw me over when he was running for president in 2023. They said they were they offered the interview to John when we were working together at Yahoo News, because John was raised evangelical in one of these very big church, and actually wrote a very good book about it called Testimony. It came out a couple years ago. You know, we've talked about this before. John's Catholic now. He's converted Catholic, or at least he's attending Catholic.
That's pretty awesome.
How old's your kiddo?
that one is 10.
Good she's still hugging. That's awesome.
She won't in about 4 or 5 years.
Oh, I'm aware. She has older sisters that I'm just here to pay their bills.
Well, let me do this, because we have to start wrapping things up. But real quick, Tom, you go first. Anything else you wanted to cover before we let you run?
Yeah, just head on over to 24sight.news, the number 24sight.news. You can also find our work at the Indiana Citizen, all one word, .org. We're going to have more stories coming out. My colleague, Julianne Ventura, just started with the Indiana Citizen. She did a real nice piece about what's happening with that budget, the request that he's made on mental health issues. So, you know, do check us out. Our story, the profile will be running at 24sight.news and Indiana Citizen, and we'll have a lot more coverage on BeQwith.
Did you get a selfie with him in there? You know, like
I didn't think to do that. We actually had some pretty deep theological discussions. It was really interesting.
All right, Josh, your turn.
Honestly, I'm excited to read the profile. I'm very interested always in finding out what makes these guys tick, because what I have found is, in my limited experience with them, there are some that are 100% true believers, and the others, they know it's all a grift and they're going along. And honestly, I don't know which one makes me feel worse, but they're definitely two different types of people. When I ran for the state house last year, I could tell you, when I met my opponent, Hunter Smith, within talking to him for 30 seconds, I realized, oh, you believe all that shit that you say. And
Interesting.
it really, really changes your frame. Because not everybody's a Lindsey Graham that'll completely flip on you. Some of these guys really believe this stuff. And my guess is that we're going to know more about that from reading Tom's profile.
And I can tell you, running against Jim Banks for Congress a few years ago, he is not a true believer. He is there for the grift. He is there for the power, period. But I'll leave it at that. Before we let you guys run, I do need to remind everybody of our sponsors. Don't forget about Robin Winston, does a great job of sponsoring both our newsletter, which goes out to 100,000 plus subscribers every morning, and just send us an email, a note. We'll get you signed up. And also Jill Long Thompson, her book Across the Aisle: Why Bipartisanship Works for America. Somewhere down below, you'll be able to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I think we're up over 150 now, something like that. But hey, it's a start. Last time Josh was on, our video is now over 8,000.
Wow.